Okay. Let's see here.
Was that a false start
over here? Yeah. I'm going to lock my camera down. Okay. All right, here we go. Hey, hi, and hello, and welcome to the Radio Tech Guys podcast. This is episode, believe it or not, episode 17. We've made it that far, and hopefully we'll make it a little bit further. First of all, Happy New Year. Thank you for being in with us again this year. We're looking forward to this year. We've made some promises that we will try to keep, maybe. Chris, maybe?
We'll do our best. You've set us up for potential failure here early on.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, we made some promises that we will better populate our YouTube channel, and we'll get some more of those how-to videos back up for you this year, and we're looking forward to it. We've made some plans that hopefully we can stick to, and I think it'll be good content. So first of all, hello, thanks for being with us. I'm Alex Linger, and on the other side of the computer screen in front of me is Chris Moran. Hello, Chris.
Greetings, sir.
How are you?
I'm glad to be back in the Mountain State.
Yeah, you've done some traveling, haven't you?
A little road weary, honestly. We always take a trip the week after Christmas or thereabouts. That's been our new family thing the last 6 or 7 years, and we were in New Orleans, Louisiana this year. And
hold on. You just said New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Okay, that's better.
And my wife's family is in Huntsville, Alabama, which is for us, coming from West Virginia, it's about 10.5 hours to her place, and then another 4.5 or 5 to New Orleans. So we did that whole thing. But I have to talk about the snowmageddon, they were calling it, in Alabama, around Birmingham and some of those areas, when the reality is for us, their snowmageddon was about like and a teeny little bit of snowflakes, but it ended up costing us a few $100 in a hotel room and an extra night of travel, because we literally got stranded in Mississippi, in a little town called Meridian, Mississippi. The rain turned to snow, and what I've just found fascinating about the whole thing, we don't think about it in West Virginia, and certainly we'll be talking to our guest here coming up in a little bit, who's in Vancouver. I mean, we get the weather up here. It's no big deal. They can't handle it. I mean, they logistically cannot handle it. They don't have equipment. They don't have the means to deal with it. So any winter precipitation for them shuts them down.
Yeah.
But this is a once every other year kind of event for them. We left Huntsville. It was 10 degrees this morning, which is unheard of.
I mean, that's a national emergency for them, isn't it?
Seriously. I mean, it's just frigid. But anyway, drove 11 hours today. We were 10 hours in the car and back home and ready for this exciting event. What's going on with you?
That's a tough day. My day was far less exciting than yours. I spent the better part of the last 3 days, I suppose, doing TV for the Cancer Research Classic in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Yes.
We were on ESPN, the number 3. So that was pretty exciting. That
cool.
Went well, and got back into my house about 3 o'clock this morning, and haven't had a lot of sleep, so that's on the agenda after this show.
Yeah, no doubt.
But hey, before we go any further, I forgot to mention how people can get a hold of us. Our email address is ask@theradiotechguys.com, and you can also follow some social media links. Chris, if you want to give those out.
Twitter is probably your best bet. We're just Radio Tech Guys at Twitter. You can search for us there, and obviously on Facebook as well. And definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, which, as Alex has maybe ill-advisedly promised, will be populated with more content than last couple of months. So we'll be doing some more kind of behind-the-scenes stuff, how-to videos, and we have a couple of really big projects that we're excited about: an FM antenna replacement, tower reinforcement, and a couple of translator installations that we're going to try to do multi-part series on the entire project, start to finish. So those are already kind of in the works, and we hope to get some of those stuff coming up on YouTube here in just the next few weeks.
Yeah, in fact, we should mention we've sort of talked about over the last few weeks the new TV for radio. Is that how we're going to say it? Studio that we've been working on in our company, that we are putting on the air tomorrow morning, in fact. So we'll take some pictures and try to get that up on Facebook and let you see the excitement there. All right. Before we bore you any further, why don't we go ahead and bring our guest in? We're very excited. We've got Ian Gunn, who's the general manager of Burli, and many of us in the broadcast community are probably familiar with Burli's newsroom product. We use it at the company that Chris and I work for. Have really grown to love it from a technical standpoint because we don't touch it very often, which is just fantastic. But of course, our newsroom staff loves it, and it's opened up a lot of ability for them around the state. Since we don't just have one newsroom, we've got multiple around the state, and they can use the software seamlessly. So let's bring Ian in. Ian, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us a little bit about what is Burli newsroom software?
Well, hey guys, Burli, it is, as you say, it's newsroom software. So it's designed for the newsies in the station to put their newscast together. I guess it's the shortest way of saying it. Of course, newsroom software is extended from that from 25 years ago, when it really was just a replacement for the teletype machine that sat in the corner and spat out lots of newsprint. Which those of us who started out that long ago remember those machines. And literally, I mean, Burli software, but other systems like it, Basis and other things that were floating around in the early 90s. It was a replacement for the teletype. So really, it was a way to get the news wires into the newsroom, so you know what was going on in the rest of the world. But of course, these things evolved from there, and so it's got audio editor built into it. So this isn't using Audition or something else over on the side or plugging it in. This is a native audio editor, designed hopefully for radio news types to do the stuff they need to do super fast. And interesting other things, the newswire long since stopped being the only source of data into a newsroom. So email and increasingly social media and faxes and all kinds of things. I mean, all the stuff that might come in from the local the county coroner's office, however they want to send out a news release, you want that to be right there in front of you. Emergency alerts, those kinds of things. So it gathers all that stuff together, lets you edit it, organize it, put it into a newscast, figure out the order of your stories, and then there's a prompter which shows up in the studio. So as you sit in the studio, the words come up very much like a TV prompter idea, come up in front of you. But the addition is that right there in the middle of the screen, there's a nice big fat play button, and you push it, and the audio plays out on air. And there's archiving, and the newsroom's phone book and all kinds of other stuff have all kind of become part of that what's the word we're looking for? Kind of suite, I guess, of tools that you use in a newsroom. So all of that's why we call it a newsroom system rather than just like news software. It's
certainly.
Yep.
Sure, that's right. Ian Gunn is our guest. He's the general manager of Burli newsroom software in Vancouver, Canada. And you mentioned it, and I remember when I started. So I've been with West Virginia Radio for 20 years, and when I got there, they were using Wire Ready in their newsrooms, and then now, so we're talking that would have been like mid to late 90s. Mid to late 90s, and it was very there were fundamental things that it could do. It was a DOS-based program. It was at the time fantastic, but it was just very much a copy management, background archiving, writing tool. That they still most of the times printed their scripts. They could have multiple stories that they would type, and then could compile a cast of those stories and then would print them. And it had cues that they had put in for their actualities, which at the time that I got there, they were playing back from carts at that time, old carts. And so it was it's come a long way, and the expectation has grown that the systems that we're deploying are more suite-like and manage the multiple tasks. And I think one of the things we have a news department in our Morgantown office where Alex and I work, of 2 or 3 folks who use the system daily, all day. That's their, that's what they're doing for their 8-hour shifts, are writing stories. There are so many things that they love from an operational standpoint about Burli that have been time-saving things for them. Things that you think you say that's simple, but in reality, it is so great. The one feature that I know Dave Wilson, our news director in Morgantown, talks about all the time is the ability to skip actually listening to his news actualities, his audio carts in the script while he's recording his casts. So he'll go through and record his casts, and it just leaves the space in there for his actuality to play back when it exports. Brilliant concept. I mean, it seems so minimal, but when you're recording as many newscasts an hour as he is for multiple stations, that becomes a big time saver. And there's a lot of things like that we found in your suite of software. And I would say that's probably fairly important to most of your clients.
That's true, and that's a great example of stuff that's just kind of evolved over time. I mean, when we first started doing this, as you say, 20 years ago, I mean, you did newscasts. The majority were done live, and there'd be a break in the automation system somewhere. Where I mean, there was a lot more live radio done 25 years ago. And so, I mean, you'd throw to the news person sitting in her booth, and she would read the newscast live. A great deal of news these days is produced by one team of 2, 3, 5 people sitting there serving many stations these days in a cluster or even for a network. So the ability to be able to record that, and as you say, it's kind of voice tracking for news. And you read through your cast, you read all the words that the anchor's supposed to say, and you just hit the clip. And yeah, you leave a fractional pause, then you carry on with the next story, and then Burli just assembles it all and then exports it to your favorite automation system and bundles it up, transcodes it, does all those things, makes it exactly 2.5 minutes if you ran 5 or 6 seconds long or short, all those little things. And most of those things have just evolved over the last 10, 15 years of people saying, hey, it'd be great if, and here's an idea. And occasionally we'll go to a newsroom much like yours and say, here, we got an idea. We'd like to try this out. We think it would save you guys some time. You want to give it a shot, knowing that the first version may be a fraction bumpy because we're trying stuff out, or it sounded like a great idea, but actually it saves you 5 minutes here, but cost you 6 minutes somewhere else in the workflow.
Right.
So,
Right.
And you work all that stuff through, and then eventually you get it down where you get these things. Then you move into a new environment where people are still using something else, and they turn around and go, this is saving so much. How did you guys figure this out? And the answer is little iterative changes over a long period of time is really the answer. But and there's a lot of them in there like that. Integrating with automation systems is a big one. The automatic recording. There's a logger that runs in the background. So we're not known as logger software. We're not really trying to replace the companies. Some of them who make great logging software for compliance with federal regulations, that kind of thing. But for news, I mean, having the machine rolling 24/7, 365 on cable news networks, and hey, you look up and there's something going on with big red breaking news across the bottom. You can roll back 15, 20 seconds or 2 minutes and grab the audio, have it in news cut, and have it on air in 10 or 15 seconds or at the top of the next hour or whatever, without having to go and find recordings or wait for the next 15 minutes to be up so that the recording's finished and all those kinds of things. So there's lots of stuff that's tucked away in there, born out of a newsroom's need to. Most of the time, you kind of run along at a fairly kind of mellow level, talking about the latest in regional news. But every so often, just that panic strikes you. You've got to be on the ball and get the stuff done. You want something that happened 4 minutes ago on the air in 30 seconds, and so you always have to kind of be prepared for the fact that what was really mundane at 4:15 on a Tuesday afternoon, it suddenly becomes really exciting at 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon.
Sure,
so a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned automation. Export capability, and that of course is monumental for us and probably for any news operation. One of the other things we mentioned, some of the integrations, and I think I will say that our company is barely scratching the surface of what Burli can do. But a few of the things that have been big for us is Dropbox integration and email integration. So the reason for that is we can send a reporter out. We can send somebody out to get a press conference for a sporting event, whatever the case may be. They can capture that audio on their phone, send it via Dropbox, and have it in the Burli software before the news conference is even over. I mean, instantaneously. In the old days, you'd have to capture that maybe on tape, drive it back, dump it into the system. I mean, the time savings there has been huge, and I know that we use it because when Dropbox has a hiccup, I get called immediately.
That's right, and that's the plus and minus of that kind of integration. And you're right, you've described it very well. We've got Dropbox in there. SoundCloud, we do something similar with for similar reasons. I mean, they've spent a lot of time and effort making it very simple for almost anyone, consumers mainly. They're not aiming it at the broadcast industry, to be able to record something or create something, in their mind, probably a Word document as much as an audio recording, dump it somewhere, and it just automatically syncs over the next few seconds and ends up everywhere else. So yeah, so what Burli does is literally we'll watch a Dropbox account, or more than one, but we'll watch a Dropbox account, and if anything new appears in that account, we'll just suck it in like it came off a regional news wire or off the AP or something. And so you give us some text, you give us some audio, that kind of stuff, and it'll show up. We do very similar things with SoundCloud as well. So you can use the mobile app, which these third parties make, record something, send it to the server. But assuming that the system like Dropbox or SoundCloud or others has some way for us to talk to them behind the scenes, not everyone does, and that's kind of often the hurdle. But they've got APIs or other things, and we can say to it every 1 minute or 10 seconds or whatever. Some of them actually will notify us and say, send us a little message that says, hey, there's something new. Do you care?
Yeah.
Often we'll say yes and have it back. But that kind of stuff, because of mobile stuff, I was talking to one of our customers in one of the major markets on the East Coast not that long ago, and they said the whole idea of the news bureau is getting to disappear. I mean, they've still got one, but they had like 5. It's because everyone's got an entire studio in their pocket now, which they're carrying for other reasons.
Yep, that's right.
And I mean, we've got mobile tools which work great on an iPhone or an Android, but I mean, a lot of these third parties are just there. People are familiar with them. They create standard formats like WAV and MP3 and those kinds of things. And so you drop them somewhere, and 10 seconds later, they show up in the newsroom. The cost to the newsroom is negligible, if anything at all. And the great thing about it is it's not a specialist tool that requires, all of this. It's a complicated training. It's Dropbox. You use it at home for your sharing photos with mom and dad 3 states away, right? So.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I think we've also found maybe other systems are like this. Obviously, we have the most experience with Burli because that's what we use. But the ability to pull in from FTP sources, for example, we cover in our northern division, we cover Pirates baseball, Pittsburgh Pirates baseball. They have an FTP service that they dump all of their news to. We have Burli connected to that, and we automatically get all of those actualities, all of that. Any of the text that they send out right there in the software. I mean, that's simple. And you can do that outside of the software very easy, but to have it in one interface in front of you has been very, very effective for our new staff. I know that's been a big thing. Can you speak to any of the other, like I said, we use Dropbox, we use email, we use FTP. You mentioned SoundCloud. What are some of the other services that you guys can interface with that maybe we haven't mentioned?
Well, there's a variety of them. I mean, the technology behind them, I think you've covered. I mean, there's email and FTP, standard file drops. Increasingly, services, the AP amongst them, but other ones like them, ABC, CBS, those kinds of things. I mean, they've all moved to largely all moved to internet delivery, and so some stuff gets downloaded by a piece of software which they provide, which is going and checking some server in New York or Washington or somewhere, and every 10 seconds checking for new material, downloads it and puts it somewhere on your network for you as part of their service. So there's new files being created on your N drive somewhere sitting off in the corner. And so you point Burli at that and you tell us how often to check, and we'll go, and if there's new content, we'll suck it in. And as you say, we just put it in order with some kind of relevance, so some filtering and putting the most obvious stuff in the most obvious places, and other stuff which maybe you don't care about so much. You want it to be there for reference, like those recordings off the cable news network. When we're not throwing those in your face the whole time, but they're 2 clicks away if you want to go find them. Stuff off. I mean, if it's middle of a weekend and you're in the middle of sports mode, you want to know that sound from the game or whatever. So we'll flash that right in front of newsroom's eyes. So hopefully there's some relevance there.
Yeah.
But FTP is a big one. It's beginning to fade a little bit, FTP now, in favor of some of the online kind of cloud-based type stuff. Dropbox and SoundCloud being kind of examples of them, but a lot of folks are just hosting their own servers now. So some of the big networks, it's literally it's effectively a web page or an RSS feed or something, and we go check it, and it says, yeah, there's new content since last time you were here, or no, there's not. The beauty of that is that, again, it's using all the latest web browser technology. It's much less complicated than it may have been 10 or 15 years ago to make these connections with satellite connections and muxes and demuxes and satellite channels and satellites that get decommissioned from time to time. Everyone's got to move their dishes, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so the internet is kind of leveling that, and it's just, oh yeah, it's just HTTP something something something. You put in a username and password, and you can get the material. So that's a big one. RSS feeds are obviously a big way of distributing stuff. The big networks, Fox and CBS and others, have RSS feeds. The beauty of RSS is that everyone can read it. I mean, your browser can read it. So if you want to subscribe, but the specification allows for you to attach a payload with it. And that's often MP3 audio. So, and again, even your browser, your favorite browser on your desktop will know what to do with that audio file. You click and push play. Burli knows what to do with it. We suck it in. We can take the text out of the RSS feed, make it into a news story, combine the two of them, and you've got a news story like it was produced in your own newsroom. It's got the intro text, and it's got the sound already attached. You drop that straight into a newscast, and you read the suggested lead and push play, and it's that simple. Most newsrooms obviously want to clean up the text a little bit, regionalize it, make it proofread it to make sure it makes sense.
Sure.
So RSS feeds are in there, and then social media is increasingly becoming important. So people are beginning to send stuff with a link off Twitter. And those kinds of things. And again, Burli will ingest those and stick it there in front of you and say, hey, this service or this state network has just posted something to Twitter. You click the link, and hey, there's a piece of audio right there for you. So
that's fantastic. Ian Gunn is with us. He's the general manager of Burli Software, makers of Burli Newsroom Suite for radio. I suppose the primary markets. Anybody else TV use it at all anywhere? Or is it really radio?
It's a bit of both is the short answer, and the longer answer is increasingly a bit of everything, right?
Sure.
The product that you guys have, Burli Newsroom, as we call it, it is primarily aimed at radio and used by hundreds and hundreds of radio stations worldwide, everywhere from Africa to the US, Northern Canada, you name it. We have a second product called Burli NE, which is a slightly larger next generation product, which puts much more emphasis on multimedia and kind of these converged newsrooms. It kind of assumes you got a newsroom of 25 or 30 or 100 people working on stuff. So, and that one is actually used by podcasters and those types of folks. But it's converged radio TV. So kind of like we're doing here. I mean, this is a podcast, but folks want to go to YouTube and see the video for it. You guys were talking about it earlier, TV for radio or visual radio, which is taking off increasingly. So having some kind of a prompter type idea, being able to switch cameras, having the concept that there might be a piece of video you want to roll. The audio plays fine on radio, but for the folks who can see this, I mean, they may want to watch it as well. And so it's much more aimed at that cross-media type thing. And a lot of these services, SoundCloud and Dropbox, a little less so, but Twitter, for instance, when you post a tweet from the newsroom, it's great to have a photo with it. And so we can handle photos and those kinds of stuff as well. So that's kind of where the future is going. And for those users, again, tend to be larger markets. They're doing mix of radio, TV, all off the one system.
Mm-hmm. I see. That's very cool. One of the things, and our audience is fairly diverse. It is radio specific, so really we're talking about the newsroom product specifically.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the things I think that people will find to be really, really helpful is the relatively low key hardware requirements. I know that was one of the things that for us. So we have like 6 individual markets that are all running newsroom in their markets. And so in each one there is a pseudo server, but it's not, people get flipped out, especially some of the smaller market stations. They're like, oh my god, we got to put servers in all these buildings. Well, no, not exactly. I mean, not in the traditional sense of like big rack mount server hardware. Like, one of the things that really not surprised us, but we were really pleasantly surprised, I guess, to learn when we were looking at system requirements, is that really there's not a massive hardware problem to get into the software. For as much as it does, it's pretty efficient.
And that was definitely one of the design goals. Some of that comes from the early days when, a couple of hundred megs of hard drive space was a big deal, and so we did our best to be efficient in the early days. But that's continued. I mean, the NE product, which does all kinds of complicated things and syncs your users and handles video and images and all kinds of stuff. Suddenly you're going to do those tricks. You're going to need big servers and terabytes of storage space.
Mm-hmm.
But for radio news, particularly in frankly most markets that aren't New York, Washington, Chicago kind of stuff, you don't need that.
Yeah.
You're doing newscast and you're doing a 2.5 or 4 minute bulletin or whatever it is of news, sending it to an automation system or 15 or 20 automation systems in 16 different markets. But really behind the scenes, well, as you said earlier, there's a lot of little workflow things that make it much easier for radio news to do their job. Behind the scenes, there's some text, there's a piece of audio, and I mean, you crunch the two of them together and you send it somewhere. And so the actual requirements these days on the kind of computers, in fact, frankly, on the things we carry around in our pockets these days, even the processors on a mobile phone these days, will do a lot of this stuff for you. So you're absolutely right. Our idea of a server is really, it's just some file storage somewhere, and almost any CPU on the market these days can do what we need it to do, as long as you're doing reasonable, fairly straightforward radio things. But even the logger, for instance, I mean, that's recording however many channels you like, 16 channels of audio in the background, and even that doesn't require server class hardware. And one of the other beautiful things about that is it means you can have redundancy, kind of RAID style, inexpensive redundant systems. You can have a second machine that can take over in 15 minutes of work if something fails on the hardware. So buying massively redundant server class material with dual power supplies and 3 NICs and all that kind of stuff, you're welcome to do it. And trust me, some of the big markets, that's exactly how they do it, because they can't afford to miss a second of airtime. Yeah. And of course, we're quite happy to fit in with all that stuff. But for most folks, you got 2 or 3 computers in the newsroom. You lose one of them, the other ones can pick up the slack very, very quickly, and that's all deliberate. That's all deliberate to try and make sure that that it's accessible and it does not require capital S servers. And if you need them, we're very happy to work with great $250,000 NetApp servers that have terabytes of data on them. But for most folks, that's just not necessary, and we're very happy to run off a standard laptop.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Let's speak a minute about scalability. I think personally, and I'm assuming this is true of how the software was designed. If you have a newsroom, maybe you have one location with one news person, Burli's a great solution for that. But if you have 11 sites around the country and you have 20, 30, 40, 50 people on your news staff, Burli's a great solution for that. And we found that to be unbelievably helpful. We have what is it, 6 locations around the state of West Virginia and Maryland as well. And we have Burli in all of those locations. We might only have 1 or 2 or 3 people in each of those places, but the site-to-site connectivity for the ability, okay, let's say we have somebody in Charleston that wants some of the actualities that they used in Morgantown. Well, it's right there. It's available right on their Burli screen. They can click on Morgantown. They can grab that audio and pull it right into their newscast. That's amazing. And like we spoke about some of the FTP and Dropbox and things like that. If that's available in our Morgantown division, well, Charleston has access to all of that. Beckley has access to all of that instantly. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. I think the scalability has just been brilliant for us. We're larger than some of the other local radio companies, but we're not enormous. but it has been an excellent fit for us. And I think that's probably true of any news division out there.
And there's a number of state networks or regional networks in various parts of the world. Britain, there's lots of groups there doing it for very similar kind of way, 8 or 10 sites and those kinds of things. Canada does it. Even Southern Africa's got similar things going on. And you're exactly right. It almost gets a little confusing when we sit down to kind of design this with folks. There's almost too many options these days of how to do it. We could throw everything onto a single FTP site and just have everyone watch that FTP site and everyone just contributes to it. And that is a model that we use for a lot of folks, because FTP can be a nice, reliable way of getting data there. But you're exactly right. You can similarly just join all the stations to each other, tell each of them where the other 5 in the network are, and you got this network of 6 stations. And I mean, literally, they show up on the screen like little nodes down the side of your screen, like the folders in your Outlook.
Exactly.
And you click on one of them and you can see all of the actualities, all of the stories, all of the newscasts from somebody who's 150 miles away. You look at their top 2 or 3 stories. You're looking for a nice kicker for the end of your newscast, and there's something fun from somewhere 150 miles away. You can reach in, you just drag and drop it across your screen. Nobody on the other end knows that you've taken it. You haven't interrupted anyone's work. Yep. You pull it across, and depending on the bandwidth, anything from 3 to 10 seconds later, it's sitting there right there in your newscast.
Yep.
And that was absolutely deliberate. And that began as soon as stations, newsrooms began all getting connected on the internet. We very quickly saw the potential there to do that kind of stuff. Some of the big networks, the kind of the household names with, as you say, I mean, newsrooms of 40, 50 people, it became a necessity for them to share that kind of data on it. And so setting up the big FTP sites and that kind of stuff, we did some of that early. But really all you need is to be able to connect to somebody else over a very basic web connection. And almost everybody can do that these days. And it's just kind of drag and drop. They can see what you're doing, you can see what they're doing, and you kind of open it up. These are folks that you share with. And so if they're all part of one big happy family, you can give them virtually complete access to what your newsroom is doing and vice versa, and you can share. If you're not all one big happy family, we got some news networks where it's much more of a push model. Well, every time I create something, either once it passes some kind of checkpoint editorially, some editor said, yeah, this is good to go, and then pushes send on it, and it gets uploaded to, again, a website or an FTP site somewhere, and 1, 20, 200, 600 customers can then get a little notification and drag it down.
So I think in addition to that, the way that works, the other part about the site-to-site thing for a lot of companies, including ours, is that it's also an efficiency in terms of staffing and cost savings options too. We can send somebody out to cover, quote unquote cover, or record a city council meeting or something, drop the stuff in like one of our distant cities, and then a news person in another market can do something with that content. Like we're not doubling up staff in a way to do it there. The other, I want to tell you, Ian, this is kind of a cool application. This may be, I don't know, I'm sure this has happened before. We may not be the first, but this is a real quick aside. Sorry, Alex, I told you we were going to do something else.
That's all good.
So we do a 3-week stint every year of a Division II college basketball tournament followed by 2 high school basketball tournaments. So a lot of our staff are on site at a basketball arena 3 weeks. I mean, like consistently, like 4 or 5 work days in a row, 3 weeks in a row. And it includes some of our sports people from our corporate office. I mean, people are just, it thins everybody out pretty badly. For the first time last year, we took we have a VPN connection courtside. So we have our own Cisco phones on our network there. We have basically we're connected to our corporate network on our courtside table. We took a workstation down and a Burli dongle, and somebody helped us set it up. But it was just basically another site, another workstation. Well, our sports guy, after he would finish calling the evening games, would cut his morning sports in Burli courtside and just export them to automation directly from the arena. And all it took was us having a VPN connection, and we were connected to the server in Morgantown, and the thing just worked. And he literally did his workflow that he would have come in at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. the next day, but just finished it before he went to the hotel that night. But it really helped us in that long-term 3-week span where we had so many staff resources committed to this basketball tournament that he could like sit courtside in this empty arena in Burli with his headphones on. We set him up a little interface, and he had a little workstation there and just did his work. Yeah. And it worked great.
And like you said, no change change in workflow. We didn't have to retrain him. He did exactly what he does in the studio.
And that's a combination, both of us deliberately trying to make that kind of stuff possible and keep it so that it can happen over VPNs. And it's also the fact that a VPN now has enough bandwidth that you can realistically send, an audio cut across it. It wasn't that long ago when a multi-megabyte file meant, 40 minutes of waiting for something to upload over a very slow, cable modem connection. Most people now have something that's a little faster than that. So at the same time as that stuff just is becoming much more accessible and much easier as bandwidth becomes not just faster but more stable and reliable. You can get it in most places now, and so those two have converged. And yeah, we're hearing stories like that. That's a pretty good example. I'm not sure anyone else is actually cutting cuts for the morning sports right from courtside. That's pretty good. I'll remember that one. But people are doing those kinds of things. City council meetings, we've got a group in Switzerland where that's exactly what they do. They send one reporter to I guess it must be a regional council type thing. Somebody records it on a Burli laptop, and then they jump on the Wi-Fi in the council chambers, and they upload cuts to 10 or 15 different places. Yeah. They do a little different sign off on each of them. We got a little tool in the audio editor that makes it very simple to add. You make your 30-second report or your 1-minute package or whatever it is, and then you can have a whole bunch of preset sign-offs, for ABC News, for XYZ News, for whatever. And you click a couple buttons. Burli edits those on the end, and as long as the ambience is similar, folks at home have no idea. You got 15 minutes and you filed a report for 10 or 12 regional stations, all from the same location, all off the same laptop. And it's those kinds of tricks that just make this stuff, just saves people time. Hey, I didn't have to drive to the station and get all this stuff done and sit down in front of equipment and fire up an ISDN. I did it all. And for the folks who come in each of those 16 sites the next morning, they come in bleary-eyed at 5 in the morning with a cup of coffee in their left hand. The last thing they want to do is some complicated download thing. It's just sitting there right at the top of their inbox, saying, here are 4 cuts from last night's city council meeting with actualities attached. Great. Yeah.
That's perfect. And Chris mentioned, staffing. Let's face it, radio almost always has a lack of staff. It's just how it works. Along with that site-to-site connectivity, if we have somebody in Morgantown who gets sick or is snowed in, let's say, it takes a phone call to somebody in Charleston to say, hey, can you cut my 5 o'clock news? And they can and export it direct. We use wide orbit automation. They can export it directly to wide orbit. Yep. Nobody is any the wiser. It just happens, and that's everyone loves that.
And that's it. I mean, interfacing with the automation, and I got to say, some of the systems, wide orbit's one of the great ones as far as we're concerned in terms of making that flexibility possible. We can send the same cut to 7 different wide orbit systems, and they make it. The good folks there make it very easy. They're great for us to work with behind the scenes too. Hey, what do you guys need? Back and forth. But there's a lot of systems out there, and we've at some point or other spoken to most of them. And that's exactly it. I mean, where you're producing this stuff now is becoming less and less important. And that idea I mentioned earlier, where the idea of a bureau disappearing is, you can be sitting, in a Starbucks somewhere. And I was speaking to a reporter not that long ago, and she works in the Rockies. And she's got this big kind of winter coat that she wears because it's cold. It would make the folks in New Orleans really excited to see what she deals with. And but she says no, she loves her winter coat for 2 reasons now, because it keeps her warm, but then she gets in the car, cranks the heater, and then she can take that winter coat off, throw it over her head, and she's got a sound booth right there, and it sounds great. She talks into her mic, she plugs it into her mobile phone or a laptop, and then she uploads it into her system as an MP3 or whatever, and to the folks at home and to the folks in most of the places down the network who are getting her stuff, they don't know that she was sitting in a car with a heater crank because she had this big winter coat thrown over her head. And those kinds of tricks you hear about, but that's all been made possible by the fact that, you got mobile coverage now that can send an audio clip in, a minute or two. And it's great. And as long as the systems on the other side can pick that in and then distribute it and all the rest of it. And she's in a hurry, so keeping it simple for her, you just send once, and some other logic. Some guy like Alex has spent the half hour to kind of, okay, when a story like this arrives, send it to this server, send it to this location, put it on this FTP site at this IP address. And I mean, there's some technical setup to do in the background, but the IT/engineering folks are quite happy to set that up. for the users, the goal really is you push that button, and when you get the green thumbs up, it means it worked. If you get a red thumbs down, it means you got to phone somebody because a server's down or you don't have enough bandwidth or whatever.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to speak to support at Burli. We found the software to be incredibly robust. In fact, we very rarely have, as technical folk, we very rarely have to intervene. 99% of the time, it's user error. But user error or not, we found support at Burli to be unbelievably good. They are quick. I mean, I don't feel like I have to call. I know that I can email, and before I have my next cup of coffee, I've got an answer and it's already fixed. Like, we found that to be huge.
You shouldn't be telling that to the GM. I'm going to have to go and be nice to the guys who work the support desk. I can't take a lot of credit for it occasionally, but yeah, no, you're right. We got good guys who they know the stuff well, but they give a darn. And most of the guys here have worked in the industry at some point, and so know what it's like to be staring at a deadline with something that's not working or whatever. Yeah. And but you're right. I mean, we have a joke here a little bit about the Maytag repairman kind of thing. I mean, it can be fairly quiet. There's enough, and we've got hundreds of customers worldwide in different time zones. So I mean, there's a steady flow of phone calls. But as you say, it's often a server has died, or we bought new hardware, or hey, we're moving to Windows 10 now, and those kinds of things, which will keep us busy for half an hour, 45 minutes. But but a lot of the time, and we hear from each location very rarely. Yeah. But that lets you get kind of law of averages. You can spread it out, and if you hear from everybody every 6 months, well, great. Then every 180 days, the other 179 days, we hear from one of the other 170 customers. So.
That's right.
So what's the workflow? Okay, so obviously we're very familiar with the software. I've been fortunate enough to meet up with you guys at NAB and a couple other places. But for folks who might be hearing about this and looking for newsroom software, what are some steps here? Are there ways to demo Burli Newsroom that they can get a look at it for themselves, or what would be a good logical step for somebody who was interested maybe in taking a look at what Burli offers for a newsroom package?
Well, a good first place to start is burli.com, the website. It's got a bunch of information there, but we're always very happy to set up a working demo. We've got a variety of kind of little simple overview type things, but as you say, because it's comparatively straightforward to set up and manage. I mean, we're very happy to get you a basic demo system going, because so many of the sources now are non-proprietary. So you can hook it up to some Twitter feeds, you can hook it up to a YouTube channel, you can hook it up to a couple of these internet news sources with really kind of 15 or 20 minutes. Have some of your real sources coming in, show the newsroom how straightforward these things can be, and let them have a bit of a play with it. A lot of it is very self-explanatory. As you said earlier, there's a lot of features in it, and so making sure that you are aware that, oh yes, we've got an auto recording system. Yeah, that what we call the wizard that will actually add all the different sign-offs on the end of it. You're probably not going to find that by yourself on day one. But so we're very happy to do a demo system, and WebEx and those kinds of things are a great way for us to kind of give you a tour. So reach out, get in touch, and there's a team of folks here who are very happy to either get you set up remotely, reach into one of your machines sitting off in the corner somewhere and put some Burli on it, or even before that, just give you a nice web demo.
Yep, absolutely. That's awesome. Hey, Ian, once again, our guest is Ian Gunn, General Manager of Burli. Thank you so much for being with us. I think if people haven't given Burli a look, they should be very interested to check it out and see if it's a good fit for them. We can tell you that it probably is. But
that's great of you to say.
but thank you once again. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And as the years roll on, I'm sure we'll speak again.
I'm sure we will. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Appreciate it.
All right, folks. Well, that was episode 17 of the Radio Tech Guys podcast. I don't know what we're doing next week, but we'll tell you somehow, I guess.
See, the year's off to a great look at us already. First episode in, we don't know what we're doing next time.
We'll figure it out at some point. Hey, watch Facebook. We'll give you some pictures of the studio we're putting online tomorrow, and keep in touch with us. Ask at theradiotechguys.com. Find us on Facebook. Just search for the Radio Tech Guys. Find us on YouTube. Subscribe. Find our podcast. Do all those things. We greatly appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great week, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.